IVM.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into A Show About Crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 151. We've finally crossed our milestone number and here we are on the next chapter.
Yes,
How are you doing, Amit?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm extremely excited to go from, the
next milestone.
The next milestone, 200 coming up soon.
Indeed. And, in continuing on our journey of amazing sort of speakers that have been with us over the past so many weeks, and of course, a lot of them being fintech founders, including last few episodes we've had. We are actually continuing on that journey today. We're talking to Mr. Girdhar Yasa, the CTO of LendingKart, another company which has been around for a while, which not too many people may already know about, actually.
So, I'd heard of the company for a long time, right? I don't know if you remember, there was a time when there were a number of companies that came out with like the KART extension to it, right? So I remember hearing about it back then, that this is a thing. And a lot of them have done really, really well, right? Flipkart, Lenskart, etc. And LendingKart too. But it was, I remember hearing about them, but finding out what they did and how they go about doing it, right? This was a little new to me, right? I did not understand the depth of their operation. And this was really, really interesting to get into.
That's true. No, and very cool. And the fact that, they're not just a consumer product company, they're also a technology platform company within themselves, right? Which provides technology platform to others in the ecosystem. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack on this episode for everyone listening today. So let's take a break, come back and talk to Giridhar.
Did you know that AI can help you recommend your next favorite podcast? In almost any field, AI can be an extremely important tool in your arsenal, but it can often seem daunting to get into. Luckily, Intel's Digital Readiness Program is here to empower everyone with the skill sets, mindsets, and tool sets to use in an AI-fueled world. So you can be ready to develop AI for sports if you want to as well. As part of Intel's AI for Youth program, Intel's been working with the CBSE, Ministry of Education, and the Government of India to empower today's youth to build social impact solutions while demystifying what exactly AI is. How do you take advantage of this? Purchase an Intel Core-powered PC, and you get free access to 80+ hours of immersive and hands-on training about AI. On completion of the program, along with the certificate, you get access to AI tool sets to try to put what you learned to good use. So don't wait. Log on to futurebanawonderful.intel.com. Future Banaw Wonderful by bringing home an Intel-powered PC.
Hey, welcome Giridhar. How are you doing?
Very well, Siddharth. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I think we were speaking earlier and, like everything we do today, this is yet another sort of virtual meeting. I would have loved to invite you actually to our studio and do this face to face. But this is the format we have. So, I'm glad you could join us. The podcast format, like our listeners is, it's meant to have real conversations, and that's what we hope to have today. So I would love to start, and get everyone listening in to sort of understand a little bit about your background and, how you came to, what the LendingKart story is today. You're the Chief Technology Officer. What is the underlying premise of the product itself, and a little bit of context setting, if you may.
Definitely. I think a lot of listeners to this podcast may not necessarily know about LendingKart, so I'll probably start off there. This country has about 30% of industries as micro, small, and medium enterprises. And India's exports, about 40% is again from this micro, small and medium enterprises. And access to financial products for these MSMEs, right, is very, very challenging. You talk to any bank, you talk to any NBFC, you talk to RBI officials, you talk to government officials, they'll echo the same thing. They'll say that, access to credit is one of the fundamental things about growth for an economy. And this particular segment is underserved in that aspect. There are various reasons for that. One is that this entire space, there is no sort of lot of records available, right? I mean, there's no formal ecosystem surrounding the data that these industries maintain. I mean, it could be a welding store down the road. It could be a cloth merchant, next street. They're all MSMEs, right? They do not have a finance department to maintain records the way you would want them to, or a bank would want them to be able to give credit. That's one point, right? The second thing is that all these MSMEs are spread across 5,000 odd cities, towns, and villages across the country. And, not more than 800 to 900 of these locations have a branch of a bank or an NBFC within 20 kilometers range, right? So I think, that's the extent of the problem. They do not have access to credit. Most of them are quite new to credit as well. And that is where Lending Cart comes into picture. What we've been able to do, Shiladitya, is that we've been able to figure out how creditworthy a business is and the set of people running a business are, even though they may not have bureau records, purely on the basis of their bank statements, right? And we are able to underwrite and give them access to credit completely digitally without any judgmental process, right? You and I, we walk into a bank, say that, we need a home loan or an auto loan, right? There is collateral associated with it. We probably have a study income, but still, we are looked at almost as if we are criminals, right? This guy's going to take my money, is he going to return it or not, right? So it's the story, right? And you can imagine how difficult it is for a small entrepreneur to get access to credit.
It's like guilty until proven innocent is the way that banks treat you, I think.
Absolutely, right? And even then, it's very difficult to get access to credit unless until there's collateral associated with it. Yeah. So we've been able to underwrite these customers. We've been able to disperse loans across, 2,000 odd locations across the country. And that's how Lending Cart started, right? With that singular vision of being able to provide credit to MSME segment, which is unsecured in nature and which is completely digital in terms of its delivery.
How long ago was this? And if you could give us a little bit of the market state. Today, of course, we know lending, fintech in general has exploded. There are so many products or so many categories of the market. But when you all, initially envisioned this, was this problem that well defined? What was the status quo, and how did you go about disrupting it with technology?
Right. So Lending Cart started in 2014 thereabouts, right? And the founders then, and Harsh in particular, was very, very passionate about the segment. He had an excellent background in banking. He worked in India, he worked abroad, and he came back. Then Harsh sort of realized that his life's goal is to make sure that this segment is well served. And initially, it was there was a business that he was running, which was around consulting, right, and being able to provide access to credit through banks to various people. That is when he sort of realized that there's a lot of scope here. There's a lot of meat here in terms of being able to provide access to financial products without having to touch the customer physically. Right. So about 7 years ago was when all this had started, and it's been going really, really well since then. The growth has been phenomenal, right? I mean, if you look at some of our numbers in terms of disbursals or the EMIs collected or the number of customers that we've served or the number of cities or AUM, it's all been, 200, 300% north of that, right? I mean, phenomenal growth. So the market is really, really great, and it's a very big market. And when you talk about fintech, Aditya, I think a lot of people largely talk about payments, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about consumer lending. A lot of people talk about constructs like buy now, pay later, right? Which is in the consumer segment for goods that consumer goods, right? But the growth engine of the country, right, in terms of the small enterprises, the medium enterprises, they still have been underserved. And To be honest, we are the only game in town doing what we do.
Oh, okay. And, like you're talking about lending to MSMEs who typically, you shared a little bit earlier, but again, just to get into the understanding of the exact market piece, right? Typically these people need collateral, like business loans, right? This is a business loan. So it's a loan for expanding your business. It's a loan for buying more inventory or whatever that may be, right? Do you typically, the way I understand it is that all of this is very subjective to what you want to use the investment for. Is there any layer of intelligence which you add to even, how you choose to give loans to these people? And if you could talk about the product in itself, what is the user flow and how does it do what it does?
Right. So good point, right? Typically, this is for business, and hence it's either a working capital loan or loan against invoice, maybe an invoice discounting or an overdraft kind of a facility. And it's for business. And the way we ascertain whether this is for a business or not is by looking at current account cash flows and looking at a business registration proof like GST, or there's a bunch of other business registration proofs as well. We look at those, right? And that is where our data comes from. If you ask me what a typical flow looks like, you as a customer, you probably log on to our app or to our mobile site, and then you give us some basic details. How old is your business? What's your annual turnover? How old you are, your date of birth, maybe even the PAN number. Once we get that information, we use that to tap onto a few APIs and networks and then pull out your GST information. And from there, we ask you for your bank statement. And you typically upload your bank statement, maybe the past 12 months bank statement in PDF format. We then look at the cash flows within the bank statement, and we have various derived variables, or, in machine learning parlance, you would call them as features, right? And you have a bunch of features. You extract those features, and those features are fed into a model, a credit model that gives us a few output parameters, which is how creditworthy is this individual, what is the amount of loan that we can offer them, for how long, what is the tenor. And if we offer them that particular loan at a particular interest rate for the tenor, what is the probability of default? Right? Basis this, we present the terms and conditions saying that, hey, look, this is what we can offer you. And you as a customer would accept it or probably negotiate a little bit on that. And then finally, once you accept it, you say that let's do an agreement on this. The agreement is generated automatically. Then you go through a video KYC process wherein you probably have to do this within your premises of business, right? Maybe with the background of your store or something like that. And then you collect, and then that's the information that we collect, right? At that time, you answer a few questions that are that prove that this is a live conversation. The coordinates lat long are recorded at the same time. And then you ask for dispersal, that money is dispersed into your bank account. We record your e-mandate. We take an e-natch on it. That is used for collecting. It's a very seamless and smooth process if you have what is required upfront. Now, there are, of course, challenges in this, right? This is the basic product. This is what the user experience looks like. There are challenges in this in the sense that you probably want to wait saying that, will I get a better loan from someone? Will I get a better interest rate? Will I get more products attached with this? Can I get insurance along with this? So at that time, the customer might look at another alternative. So we use a little bit of gamification. We maybe, sometimes our sales process sort of calls them and talks to them and negotiates and then gives the customer what they want. So that is a little bit of an additional process that is involved. So fundamentally, Shiladitya, this is the base product. There are many nuances, many complications. We could certainly talk about those.
I wanted to ask about, I wanted to ask about something else, but now you're saying that let's talk about the nuances. That's also something I wanted to talk about. So when you talk about analyzing through cash flow, right? That feels, when you say, and then you pull in GST information and stuff like that, you use all of this to create your own credit rating of some sort and decide based on that, right? Is cash flow, I mean, like, how important is that in these small businesses, right? Because I feel like a lot of the small businesses that I have come across or people have spoken to me about, they actually, that's their biggest problem, right? That the money does not move at all. And if that's the basis on which loans are being analyzed for them, that feels like, I don't know. I mean, like, does that really solve as much of the problem as it could?
So, Amit, I think there are two parts to this, right? One is that how much useful information can you extract from that bank statement? Number one. Second thing is, what is the requirement of a business? Now, if I'm a small business and probably I have 2 current accounts maybe, and I'm running my business using those 2 current accounts. Let's say I come to you and I say that, hey, Amit, I need 50 lakhs of loan. Then what's your way to ascertain whether 50 lakhs is my requirement, right? Or am I asking you 50 lakhs maybe to spend 35 lakhs on a car and the rest of the 15 on the business? Or if 50 lakhs is entirely for my business, because the latter is what we want to lend for, right? So a good way to try and understand that is to look at what is this business making, right? What do their revenues look like? And a very good proxy for that is a bank statement. There are alternative information avenues as well, like, if you're filing GST returns on time, and we look at that. So that's a good avenue as well. But the vehicle for moving money really is the bank account. And it's a very good representation of how you can ascertain what the credit worthiness of a customer is. Now, there is other ways as well, right? Like, if you and I go and we want a home loan, then an evaluator comes home, looks at the property and says that this is what's worth such and such, right? And they also look at our CIBIL score, because, how did we borrow in the past? How much did we borrow? Did we pay on time? Now, a lot of these customers that we are talking about, they are probably new to credit. Someone has started a coaching center, right? And they've never taken a loan. Maybe they started with 3 students in their backyard, right? And then they are wanting to buy a small premise and hire 2 people, and they need a loan for that. They've never taken a loan. They don't have a bureau score. They don't have a credit score. So how do I know whether this customer can be given a loan and how much? Naturally, I say that, hey, have you registered your business? If you have, and you have a bank account associated with it, then why don't you tell me what's coming in and out of that bank account, and we'll figure the rest.
Interesting. I'm guessing this gets complicated when people merge their professional and personal, like proprietorships, generally function out of people's personal bank accounts, right? Does this complicate issues sometimes, or is that, I know this might be somewhat adjacent to the main conversation, but I just, it came to my mind.
It certainly does, Amit. And, it's not just one bank account, right? People may have multiple bank accounts. They may keep one bank account really clean, right? And the other set of bank accounts might be problematic as well, right? So,
right.
And our model actually takes care of that, right? We look at where money is coming in and going from.
Okay.
And there have been more advances. Like the other day, the account aggregator ecosystem went live, wherein through the intermediary of the account aggregator, we are able to identify what all bank accounts a particular person is associated with.
Right, correct.
Right. So naturally, we'll be able to derive that information.
Very interesting. And, a lot of what you mentioned is obviously aided by the general advancements of, APIs and, our payment ecosystem, right? The GST, the ability to pull that, the account aggregator being the most recent. So all of these things obviously aid your model and the ability to pull information in a lot of ways, right? But back when you started and in the initial days, what was really available to sort of take the risk? Because could you really give that delta in terms of, let's say, the amount you're giving, right? The capital amount that you are giving versus a bank who would say, okay, show me, put your office as collateral and show me this, show me that. Were you really able to give that delta is also another question I had. Like, alternative lending always existed, right? I mean, just to preface, NBFCs, there were at the shady end, there were the loan sharks. Were you able to give the amount needed at the right interest to make your option lucrative versus the others is what my question is.
Right. So, Shiladitya, it's very interesting, right? Because you mentioned loan sharks. You're willing to go to a loan shark and borrow at a 36% interest rate, or you're willing to swipe a credit card and buy, goods that are necessary for your business. So look at the amount of interest rate that you are willing to pay for your business to run, right? So clearly, we are able to lend below that. And that itself is a big advantage, right? Number one. The second thing is that when you borrow on your credit card, right, it is there's a lot of charges, right? And there are red flags. The moment you borrow on credit card and probably say that, hey, I'm going to use this like a loan, your phone starts ringing and it doesn't stop ringing, right? And the bank just doesn't let go.
I founded a business, multiple of them, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So
right. So
I'm sure Amit does too.
Yeah, so there's a great value proposition that we've had from day one. Now, we did not have all the information that we have today, right? So earlier, if you wanted to do KYC, we couldn't do video KYC, right? But we could send a local person, right? Tie up with someone and send a local person saying that, hey, take a selfie and send it across. Pick up their KYC documents, do an in-person verification of OVDs, originally verified documents, and then, courier them across to us. So there were various ways within the regulatory ecosystem that we've been able to take advantage of and design a product appropriately. Our models were not as sophisticated as they are today, right? There were experienced credit analysts involved in the system at that point in time. But overall, we believe that all this can be done digitally without having a branch presence. And the abilities to scale was phenomenal from day one.
Correct. So, obviously you identified that this is a very large market and a very underserved market. And you mentioned earlier, that's the reason you all got started. But like most things early, disruptive in the financial services system, there were hurdles to actually enabling it, right? There was a technology hurdle, there was a regulatory hurdle, there was purely just I'm guessing you are a NBFC yourselves today. You lend from your own book. Earlier, you probably have worked with a bank and had to lend off of their book. What was the appetite for doing this, with your early partners?
So, I think as far as lending on our books or with partners' books is concerned, we do that quite a bit even today, right? I mean, we don't lend exclusively from our books. We have co-lending arrangements with a bunch of funds, banks, and NBFCs as well. That's been there always,
that's
right?
Standard.
And
okay.
That's been there, but that part is growing. Right. And the reason why it is growing is because we've been able to understand how to do this. And hence the confidence that a lender would have on our process is quite high. So if we go to a lender and we tell them that, look, we have this process, this is what we are guaranteeing in terms of default, and we'll back that guarantee up, saying that if I say that individual is creditworthy for maybe 10 lakhs for 3 years, at maybe 25% interest rate, and the probability of default is 2%. So are you willing to lend to a pool of individuals like this? So a bank or an NBFC would say that, sure, but what if the default goes to 3%?
Yeah.
Right. So there are two ways we answer that. We say that, look, we've done this, so we know that we can stay within 2%. And we'll back it up with an FLDG, which is if beyond the 2%, someone defaults, then we'll take it on our books.
Okay.
Right? So there's a lot of confidence that we have in our systems and in our evaluation process and in our delivery mechanism and in our collections intelligence and our collection mechanism. So others can onboard to our platform.
You actually answered a question I was going to ask anyway about are those default numbers or, it's a very common banking term. You hear NPAs. Are those, we've always known that those are bad in the traditional banking ecosystem, right? I mean, in fact, they're worse at the higher end and all of that, we understand. But the target segment you go after has your thesis held for all these years that
Absolutely.
The bar is
absolutely. Shreya. See, last week, Harsh, our CEO, right? He got an email from a transport company in Ludhiana. And that email read something to the effect of, we started a business. We were involved in the transport industry for a long time, but three of us friends started this business just before COVID. And we did a bunch of mistakes, and then COVID struck us. Nobody was willing to touch us. You gave us a loan, right? Here's what they said. They said that when nobody was willing to touch us, you gave us a loan, but we haven't been able to pay 2 EMIs. Now, I'm not sending this email across to ask for a waiver. I'm just sending this email to give you guarantee that we will pay, right? And it was a very touching email to see, right? I mean, saying that this is what we sort of live for, right? And work for. Right. So our thesis is not that, okay, there's data, of course, we are able to crunch and figure out using data what creditworthiness is. But at the same time, nobody wants the social stigma of having, defaulted and people chasing them down for payments.
Right. It was that everyone treats you as a crook by default. That's actually the interesting, opposite of that. The reality that is the opposite. So on that note, Giridhar, I'd like to, come back and talk some more, but a quick break before we do that. So Amit, Intel's impressing me yet again.
You heard about Intel vPro, huh?
Yeah, I did. Exactly. I mean, imagine you're a security and IT manager. There's nothing like Intel vPro out there. It basically helps you protect your entire organization's computers from like cyber attacks and basically keep them functioning all the time.
I know exactly what you mean, right? I mean, like cybersecurity is like a major deal these days, right? I know that both at work and at home, I'm really taking a lot more care about these things than I used to.
Exactly. And the way I see it, right? I mean, Intel has obviously developed this a lot. They have something called a threat detection technology. They have something called a hardware shield. It's basically everything that you need to protect your entire organization from stuff like ransomware, crypto mining, all of these latest sort of threats that are out there.
And what's really cool? It's not just that, right? They also have this below the OS security, which is basically used for hardware and firmware changes to identify when stuff happens over there or when there is malfeasance happening on your application or data protection stuff. This really helps with memory corruption, all that kind of stuff, right? So they're just basically kind of helping to really reduce the number of attack surfaces an organization has.
That's what a business needs, right? I mean, pretty much a business wants that, okay, I have one platform and I get all my checkboxes around, all these various small things that I need to protect it. So it's good to see that Intel is developing a platform that's built for businesses.
Yeah, and it really is, right? I mean, even the cloud-based manageability of all these services, right? So basically everything can be done remotely, whether it's managing or repairing these systems. You can just basically nobody has to go anywhere, especially in these times. I think that really does help.
Oh yeah. I mean, during work from home, it's basically exactly what you need. It's a godsend sort of technology.
Amen to that. And so remember, everybody, just go check out Intel vPro and Intel's other amazing products at intel.in/IT heroes. Remember, Intel vPro, it's built for business.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Giridhar, you've been, patiently answering a lot of our curious questions around, lending to the MSME market. And I think, Amit, you had one more.
Yeah, well, so actually, I was looking at your website, right? And while looking at your website, I saw something on it which prompts this question, right? Like at the bottom of the website, there is a note saying that no processing fees are being charged by lending card before disbursement of the loan amount. Any individual claiming otherwise must not be entertained. This kind of tells me that there is a reseller system that's developed kind of on its own without your pushing it. Is that the case over here? Or somewhere other people coming in and kind of helping other people get loans and kind of saying that, hey, we'll become agents for lending card. Is that something that's happening? Is that something that people are doing?
There's a sales process to lending. And, in a lot of, there's what you call as DSS, right? Direct selling agents who involve themselves in this process. Now, there are a lot of models, right? Wherein if you were to look at NBFC or a bank that has a physical presence, just the fact that they are having to send someone across to collect documentation, to verify, your premises, maybe to evaluate your collateral and do a valuation of that. All that involves heavy physical evaluation, right? And there is expertise involved in that. And you have to pay for that expertise, and the number of people that would knock on your door to sort of ask for a loan will be very high. So which means that you have to charge a processing fee, otherwise you cannot sustain. This is very different from a digital process. Right? In the digital process, if I built in tech systems that can enable this, I can scale. And with scale, my costs reduce. So overall, the cost of customer acquisition, right, and the cost of delivery, and the cost of and the cost of servicing, sort of are amortized, right, within the cost that I have incurred for putting up my technology systems and using them to take the customer through the funnel and service them and provide a loan, which is very, very different from a physical process. And hence, the processing fee that we are talking about can be very, very low for something that is completely digital like lending card, to the point of it being even zero, unless until we disburse. And because, naturally, when we disburse, there's two ways, right? I mean, we could either merge into a rate of interest or, call that as a different fee, or even provide a small business with value-add products, right? Saying that, look, you probably need insurance and you want insurance. So all that is possible, Amit. So, but the warning note that you've seen on the website, right? It's largely telling people that, look, if someone approaches you saying that I'll get you a loan from lending card, pay me a certain amount of money, you probably don't want to trust them.
But is that something that happens? Is that kind of thing? I mean, like, again, I've heard of lending card for years, right? You keep hearing the news stories and such like that. But is there that degree of general kind of, is lending card reaching a brand of that nature where people will go out and say, hey, I want to get your lending card loan? Is that... Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
That happens quite a bit. Yes, that happens quite a bit. In fact, there's all kinds of social fraud as well that takes place, right? And we do have, and that's the challenge that we have. We grow X, 10X, 100X. Then how do we combat that fraud? How do we combat these challenges using technology? Because that's the only scalable way of doing it.
Yeah, on that note, you shared earlier, of course, the underlying technology is your model, your, machine learning. It obviously gets better month on month, quarter on quarter, as more systems get integrated to it and as more data comes in, right? Where, how do you think you still maintain your edge as a service and as a independent sort of lending platform? Now that this data is also sort of the rest of the market seemingly has caught up to this, right? I mean, at some point, and I'm throwing that assumption out there. If I'd love to know if you agree or disagree, but there is generally more data, digital data about every business available today, right? Whether it's the government systems we mentioned earlier, or the fact that it's very hard to not have a digital footprint. So do you think, how do you still maintain your edge? Is it that, historical sort of legacy, or what are the tech innovations that you're doing, if you can talk about a few of those?
Right. So first off, I think, there is this aspect of a lot of financial institutions wherein the left hand does not talk to the right hand. Right?
Yeah.
And you see that, right? I mean, you probably take a credit card from a bank. You probably also have a bank account with them. You have to log on to two different portals to even do something.
Yeah.
Right? There is a very good chance that in terms of data sharing as well, the same thing happens within the bank. That is the first. Risk models are heavily entrenched, right? And nobody is even willing to touch someone that has a business which is less than 3 years old.
Yes. I remember that.
Nobody is even willing to touch. And that is the backbone of the country, right? And that is where the gap comes from. But however, everyone wants to serve them. Everyone wants to serve them. Nobody, because they do not have the confidence of how do I go about executing it. 60 million MSMEs, right? How do I reach 60 million MSMEs by, not spending a lot and getting reasonable gains out of the business at the end of the day, right? And Shiladitya, it's non-trivial. Just having data, there'll be a lot of data, right? I mean, the bank, at the end of the day, while we say that we take a bank statement, the bank statement is already there with that bank. Maybe, they can do they can, right? So why don't they do that? Like I said, right? I mean, the processors are deeply entrenched. There are other priorities as well, right? For that bank, and for a universal bank, you have priority sector lending, and you probably have some NPS from there. There is statutory ratios that you will have to maintain. There are complications, right? Regulatory in nature. And corporate banking is really lucrative, so they'll probably want to get more money from that avenue. So I think, in some sense,
so it's a matter of focus, is what you're saying.
It's focus. It's focus at the same time. Strategically, right? You have to decide that here is how I want to approach this problem. Here's what I want to do in a sector which has traditionally been very difficult, even if I had hundreds of thousands of foot on the ground. Right? This is not a problem wherein, I already probably, think about a different kind of a business, right? I'll give you an example wherein there's newspaper and milk coming to my doorstep every day. Someone is delivering that every day. I'm going to digitize it, and my value add is going to be that you can pause sending milk sometime. You can order easily, right? And you want a different kind of a newspaper. I can change that quickly online. This is not that. This is not digitizing something that is working physically, right, and making it better. This is something that doesn't work very well even in the physical world, right? And which is why Shiladitya and Amit, we are the only game in town.
Yeah. And that's also, by the way, a surprising thing to note, right? That there are, I'm sure there are other people trying to aid, service the MSME market and probably credit for them as well in some other way. But the way you're talking about it, it seems like, it's just a matter of everyone else putting their time, energy, and focus into, this one single problem, which brings me to, ask you what is your road ahead, because you've as a company, as a platform, you've been there. What is next for LendingKart? What does the next 3 to 5 years look like? And if you could give us a little glimpse of that.
Right. So one of our investors says that you have been a fintech, now you've got to be a tech fin, right?
Okay.
So which is so we have a technology arm, right? LendingKart Technologies Private Limited, and LendingKart Finance Limited uses the services, the technologies that are developed within LendingKart Technologies Private Limited. Now, just like LendingKart Finance Limited is a sort of a quote-unquote client of LendingKart Technologies, we could have other banks and NBFCs, right, on our platform, right, using our technology stack, which we are continuously maintaining, upgrading, ensuring that it meets the regulatory requirements and also offers a superior customer experience. So in the past, if you have seen, we have focused really on the loan product and servicing our customer. Now we are actually focusing more on product first view and a tech first view to everything that we are doing. Right? I told you about the acceptance process earlier, right? Wherein a customer comes in, they look at a certain rate of interest, and they are probably wanting to negotiate. Right. And then, they probably want to talk to someone. But how do we make that as well enticing, and how do we bring in a customer and give them confidence that, look, this is the best that you, or is LendingKart really going to give me this, and are they going to service me well, right? How do we give them confidence that maybe, there is 100 others within a 20-kilometer range that have taken a similar loan from us, and here is 2 that you can probably talk to. Right? So all this is possible, right? I mean, because you get more confidence, right, out of the process. If you as a customer know that, oh, hey, you know what? So that entire process of gamification and enhancing the product using technology, right, is where we are investing heavily.
Understood.
That's one part. The second part, like I said, right, is that other banks and NBFCs, because we are able to, we eat our own dog food anyway, right? So the other banks and NBFCs can onboard to our platforms as well. And with a lot of confidence, right, in our origination process, in our underwriting process, in our ability to provide guarantees around that, and in our ability to sort of provide them intelligence to be able to collect as well. So this end-to-end bouquet, only enhancing those as platforms and making sure that others can onboard to this is where we are going to be investing heavily as well.
So a little tangential to this also is, like I said earlier, there was a status quo of credit in the country anyway, of all these sort of unorganized credit, options. But very initially also, there was a lot of this microfinance sort of a revolution, right? Which India did go through. And a lot of, I know it was focused maybe on certain sectors, probably like agriculture and so on. So what happens, that market? Are you in a way, my question is, which is the market you're disrupting? Are you disrupting more of the traditional bank credit? Are like the big listed companies choosing to work with you instead of the bank just because of the process efficiency? Or is it really that the smaller of the long tail MSMEs?
Yeah, I think like maybe what would be helpful here is to get an understanding of what is what's the average loan size? What's the average term,
the distribution
right?
of your...
Because that would kind of help with understanding who your customer is really.
Correct. So Amit, Shiladitya, traditionally, right, our customer base, we are very, we worship our customer, right? I mean, it's MSMEs. So micro, small, medium enterprise, and they are the backbone of this country, and we want to serve them. So that customer base is standard. And there is, in terms of the average ticket size, there's a variety of, there's a whole spectrum of needs for this customer, right? I mean, someone might want a crore, someone might want 1 lakh rupees. On average, our ticket size is between 5 to 10 lakhs.
I see.
And our average tenor has grown over time, because when we started initially, we did not have a lot of data to be able to understand probability of default, right? And what might be our NPS. So it has grown over time, and we are somewhere around 2.5 to 3 years in terms of average tenor right now.
Okay, so I mean, like if you're talking about that kind of money, I'm going to guess it's mostly working capital related, right? Because again, that seems to be like, that if you own, like as you said, an electrician shop, you want to expand the shop, or you want to buy a tempo to do some deliveries or something like that. Those kinds of expenses. Do you see a lot of people like topping loans up? Like topping up might not be the right word, but let's say I need a payday loan right now to make payroll, so I'm taking 2 lakh rupees this month, and then 3 months later, I'll take another 5 lakh rupees this time to buy the tempo. Do you see a lot of that kind of thing once people come in, or is it because I feel like one of the things that does happen over here is that in India generally, right, which I think is different from other places where I've had some exposure to business, right, is that over here what happens is people say, "Acha, we are taking this much ka bank ka loan," whereas in other places they work with credit lines, right? So so over here you take a loan for each thing you do. When you want a machine, you take a loan. When you want to expand your plant, you take a loan. When you want to do this, you take a loan. Whereas in the US, for example, most smaller businesses have credit lines, which they basically use as needed and pay back as and when. So
it's like overdraft.
Does this function kind of like that? Or, I mean, do people use it like that? Because it seems like it would be something that would work well like that.
It definitely does, Amit. As in, our mainstay has been a working capital loan. But, as we expand our customer segment, we realize that there is a bunch of other financial products that are important for our customers, right? And that need not necessarily be credit-related or money-related alone. Like you said, right, some of them might want a very short-term loan, maybe for 6 months, and it's about only 50,000 rupees, right? Now that works on a completely different kind of a model, right? So that's one area that we've been working on. Second thing is, like you said, right, a overdraft kind of a thing, wherein there's a bunch of cash and then you dip into it whenever you need it, right? Then there is invoice discounting, right? I mean, you're going to purchase something and then, you would want to cover that expense, right? And then quickly pay it off. Then there is this other, but at the end of the day, what we've also done is that we've said that, look, all of this is basis score that we have built right, for a particular customer, right? And now we are actually saying that we'll offer that score as a service. So, you could buy your business's financial health report from Lending Cart, and say that, look, lending card thinks that I am so and so much credit worthy, right? And then you can probably take that to someone and say that, give me a loan.
Give me something better. Yeah.
Right. So that's possible. And it's really, it's like bureau score, right? We want our scoring mechanism to become the default in this industry.
Very interesting. Giridhar, a lot of people who are probably listening to this, have understand, let's say, the fintech market. We've actually had a lot of folks we've spoken to, who work in various sort of the consumer lending and other products, right? What would be, as closing notes, what would be your recommendation or advice to, anyone who's looking to build in this space? Or, of course, if you want to do a shout out, if they want to reach out to you, where's the best place to reach out to you? Just some parting notes on that.
I think, definitely my email address is giridhar@lendingcard.com. Happy to speak to anyone who'd like to talk to me about this, right? It's a very interesting space. And, I believe there's space for a lot of innovation here, right? And there's a space for a lot of products to be developed out here. If there are certain segments wherein people are working in allied businesses and they would like to leverage lending card as a partner, right? We welcome them with open arms. If there's a e-commerce website that's probably catering to maybe handicrafts, and they would like to partner with us to offer credit to their sellers on their platform, right?
Artisans. Nice.
We could enable them. Right, we could enable them with scoring mechanism. We could enable them with the credit products that we have. We would want to partner with people, right, to serve the segment at the end of the day,
right? In
whichever way we can. That could be using the credit score or by actual product as well, or even if there's some lending happening from their end, share data with us, and then we could actually crunch it for them and figure out insights for them. There's a whole lot of ways we could partner.
And would you say that you don't want to be the only game in town, because it can get boring if you don't have others trying to disrupt you? Seems like it's
I think Shiladitya, if you talk to people, right? I mean, there is a lot of people who are lending to MSME segment. I mean, right. Every bank says that they are lending to MSME segment. There are specialized financial institutions that are lending to the MSME segment. It's a favorite segment, right? Severely undertapped. So from that point of view, there are other players. But when I say we are the only game in town, the way we do it and the way we approach it and the way our trajectory is mapped and our future is mapped is unique in nature. Right. And I have a strong belief that will continue to be the case.
Lovely. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. I'll just throw a quick note in for everybody over here. Please do remember ratings or reviews linked to this. If it's on Apple, we would appreciate that. Also, do the review as well. I know it's writing some words, but do write some words. It helps a lot. It helps people find out about the podcast. So please, we'd appreciate that.
Yes, and Giridhar, I mean, let's continue to see lending card top the charts in that sense, and of course, all the best. And thank you so much for speaking with us today and sharing the story.
Certainly, thanks for inviting me, Shiladitya and Amit.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to Mansi Gupta, aka Maxplay, about her rapid growth as a female gaming creator on YouTube. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam speaks to Sandeep Bagla, CEO of Trust AMC, about the status of death funds during the pandemic and their importance in portfolios. On a show about crypto, Rohan asks the question, what is a crypto wallet? To Tarusha Mittal, podcaster and COO at Oro Pocket, Uniform and Cloud Reno. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina dives deep into the imposter syndrome and shares some helpful techniques to overcome it. And on Football Shitball, Gaurav and Sivram talk about the showstopper game of the week, Liverpool versus Manchester. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our others for that matter, please do tell a friend. We really appreciate you spreading this. Word of mouth helps a lot. And finally, this week, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, and Intel. We really appreciate the support.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.